My brother just finished doing an uplift or facelift on a deck, and I figured now would be a great time to go over really how to cut stringers, like 4 or 5 different ways you can cut stringers, and an overview of how we did ours. So in order to get started, you need really 3 to 4 measurements. So I wrote this in Sharpie just so you can see it better, but the first measurement you need is the total rise. So the total rise would be the height from one floor to the next finished floor, and since we're building a deck outside, it's from the ground until the top of the deck boards, and this for me was 45.5 inches. 45.5 inches. And next you want to know your riser height, which is normally between 7 and 8 inches. So the height of the riser is this part of the cut on the stringer. So we went with 7.5 inches. So 7.5 inches, and then you can divide the total rise, which is 45.5, divided by the riser height, which is 7.5, and that would give you your number of steps. So for us, that equaled 6 steps. The tread depth, which is this part, this cut on the stringer, which is where your foot would actually land at. For us, we went with 10 inches. That's what we went with. And the stringer length, so they say you would normally go 14 inches per step. So we had 6 steps, so 6 and times 14, which came out to around 84 inches, which our stringer actually ended up being shorter than that, but that's just a good measurement so you know which size board to order and whatever board to buy. So other special considerations, other consideration that you want is your bottom riser height. Once you mark out all your risers, I'll show you how to cut the bottom riser or the bottom tread. So you get this cut here, and whatever size, whatever the thickness of your tread material. So we went with 2x material. So this riser ended up being cut 1.5 inches shorter than all the other risers, so the steps are all at the same height. So this step was cut at 6 inches, and the 6 inches on this plus the 1.5 inches gave us a 7.5 inch step here for the first step. So it would match the 7.5 inch step for the next steps. And also so the bottom riser was 6 inches for us, for our material. And also the top, there's 2 ways you can do your you can mount your stringers. We did what's called a flush mount, where our steps actually went all the way to the top of our deck. Or you could do the standard way, which if you needed 6 steps, you would cut 5 stringers and then the top would be your last step. So but if you do the flush mount like we did, you have to account for this is our header board. So we put a header board across and attach the stringers with joist hangers, and we set it down the thickness of our tread. So we set it down 1.5 inches. But so this stringer here was cut at 10 inches, but then you have to account for the 1.5 inch header plate, so you have a flush step at the top. If you want to overhang, any overhang on your tread, take that into account too. So it would be the header board plus the tread depth plus the length of this riser, which would give you your total length of your top riser or top tread. So keeping these same measurements in mind, the least cost-effective way would be to cut your own, to just cut a template. So if your riser height was 7.5 inches, you get a piece of scrap lumber and you measure 7.5 inches for your riser, 7.5 as your riser, and we had 10 inches as our tread. So then you would just place it on the edge of your board to mark, and then just mark, move it, line it up to the last mark, and keep marking. That's option 1. Another option is to use a framing square. And I'll turn it. If you use a framing square, you set one side, and also on a framing square it's important to, if you use the outside measurements on one side, also use the outside measurements on the other side. So we got our framing square, 2 spring clamps, and a straight edge. So we set this side at 7.5 and this side at 10 inches, and you come line it up with the edge of the board, and then you just mark, move down, line it up, and continue your marks and cut along those lines. If you didn't have spring clamps, you could also just use the framing square, and you will just line up 7.5 and line up 10, and then you will use those to do your marks and keep going and so forth. And you can also use the framing square with these stair gauges, and you just lock those in to your measurements. So we lock this in at 10, lock this in at 7.5, and it's the same thing. Line it up with the edge, and then you make your marks, slide down, line it up, make your marks. So those are 4, and then the 5th way would just to be, you can buy pre-cut stringers from a home improvement store, and you can make those, try to make those fit your application.